Man calling the game tomorrow for Fox Sports is play-by-play specialist Joe Davis. He joins us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. Joe, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Good.
Great.
There's this trend developing with you where you call at least one relevant BYU game a year. Houston in 2013, Texas in 2014, UCLA last year. Two of those were a one-point game. The other was a blowout. So what in the world are you expecting tomorrow from BYU and Arizona?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure, and I think that's kind of the theme all around, isn't it? Nobody really has a clue what to expect with this one. And I think that's the case anytime you go into a season opener with any team, but man, especially in this one, I'm not sure that, and I've not been doing this relatively speaking that long, but I've never seen a season opener or a game period where there's as much unknown as there is in this one. I think that adds another level of intrigue to the whole thing, as if you needed any more to get a season started.
Taysom Hill is an interesting unknown in this because when he's healthy, you kind of feel like you know what you get. And you did a game when he was a sophomore against Houston, which was a 400 passing game, 100 rushing game, one of the 8 times that's happened in history. Then he has a great start to 2014, gets hurt. 2015, of course, hurt in the Nebraska game. So what are you expecting or maybe hoping to see from Taysom Hill in game one now in his 5th year?
Yeah, I guess now that I kind of not forgotten, but I just wasn't thinking about the fact that I had done that Houston game as well. So I guess if there's one trend from the games I've done, it's been Taysom Hill going off. You know, when you combine that one with the Texas game 2 years ago. You know what? I think when he is healthy, and you know, hopefully he is, and hopefully he's himself, but when he is himself, he's one of my favorite players in college football. And you know, that's a different thing than saying he's projects as one of the best players at the next level or anything. It's completely different than that. Just from a subjective standpoint, watching the guy play the game, man, I mean, that's what you love to see in college football. The way that he's persevered through the injuries, and you know that was the story even the last time we saw him coming back from an injury, and it's the story again here. So he's done it time and time again. You've got that side of the story. You've got the fact that he's an incredible leader. The leader. I think you want, you know, it's always great when your best leaders are your best players, and BYU has that, it seems like. So I'm a huge fan of Taysom Hill and can't wait to watch him tomorrow and hope that we see, you know, the Taysom Hill that we've come to know over the last 5 years or whatever it's been.
Joe Davis, Fox Sports play-by-play, is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Joe, let's talk about some matchups that you're looking forward to see between BYU and Arizona. What specific matchups are you looking at?
I think one thing to look for is Arizona up front is tiny by power conference standards. They average about 255 pounds across the defensive line, have a couple of former walk-ons starting up there. Now, I know BYU's strength is not its offensive line, so it's not like it's a chip shot prediction to say, well, they're just going to pound away, because that's a spot where there are some question marks for BYU. So that's an interesting matchup for me, because I think for most teams, Arizona's going to get pounded away on the ground. We'll see what BYU does in that regard. We'll see how that offensive line is. I think Arizona's wide receivers are pretty talented. They got a couple of guys in the slot that are undersized, but really good in space. And then Trey Griffey, who gives him some size out on the edge. I'm interested to see how they utilize him. And, you know, I know on one side for BYU, you've got a guy that everybody likes, Michael Davis, but then on the other side, you got a guy playing his first college game in Troy Warner. So I think a couple of matchups on each side of the ball could be really interesting to look at.
Joe, the number one thing a play-by-play needs to do is say the names correctly of the players in the game. So we saw you tweeted out about Moroni Laulu-Pututau. What other ones, you got that one down, and what other ones maybe do you need our help with?
Oh, man. So anytime I do a BYU game, that's one of the first places I go is to that pronunciation guide, because I never want to, you know, just be checking it like Saturday morning, or, you know, even speaking with the SID staff when we see them on Friday. That's not enough time, at least for my brain, 24 hours to get some of those names down. So on, you know, Sunday and Monday leading in, I'm getting those names spelled phonetically on my board. You know what I do is I try and write it phonetically, and that's not a novel concept, but I try and write it phonetically on my board so that I can't get it wrong if I just read the sounds that I put down on my board. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, I'm going to be okay. And, if so, that'll be because I've made myself a cheat sheet where it's impossible to get it wrong. Because I say it's impossible to get it wrong, I probably just jinx myself.
As long as you don't call Taysom Hill Tyson or something, or Tanner Mangum Tyler Magnum, I think you're in the clear.
There were issues last year, Joe.
Yeah. How about that?
Not
remember,
you, other people.
I remember going into the UCLA game, them saying it's Mangum, not Magnum. And I'm thinking, I know. The N is before the G. I know.
There was some serious sensitivity to that because there were graphics and it was like multiple times a game. It was weird. Yeah, but yeah, the Polynesian names can always be a challenge, but of course you're a pro. This week 1 is unbelievably awesome. Been dubbed like the greatest opening week ever, Yet there's this BYU Arizona game, which looks like it's probably the best game of two unranked teams. What can you say about this matchup in the first week?
You know what? And you guys will know better than I am covering big picture, I guess. But my inclination is that it's the best game in that window. Is that right? Is the 10:30 window not have as many of the crazy good matchups?
Oh yeah, no, it's the game at that time for sure.
Good. So that's that's helpful for all of us. Helpful for each of those programs' brands. It's helpful for our network. It's helpful for Brady and I and Jenny calling the game. You've got this great lead up with the greatest weekend in football history, I think is the way that some networks have termed it. And then you got a great way to finish the day with BYU and Arizona. So we can't wait to get it going.
Joe Davis with this play-by-play specialist on Fox Sports. We'll be calling BYU Arizona on Fox Sports 1 tomorrow. Joe, is there anything that BYU fans should know about Arizona in terms of star power? Like, who should BYU fans be worried about on the Arizona team?
That's a good question. There's not a lot of star power on Arizona. Now, the fact that they have a quote-unquote quarterback controversy is something that Brady, Quinn, and I are still trying to wrap our minds around. And the fact that the narrative developed last year that Anu Solomon had a down year, it's not true. If you look at the numbers, I mean, if you look at just the baseline numbers, he might not have thrown for as many yards, but that's partially because he missed time. And, as far as the wins and losses go, he had a horrible defense. He didn't have nearly as good of a running game as he did as a freshman. So in no way did Anu Solomon take a step back last year. So to answer your question, I think Anu Solomon is a potential star player for them. He was as a freshman. Somehow a narrative developed last year that he wasn't, and I know part of that is the injuries. It's just it's wild to me that it's turned into a thing where he's fighting for his job. And I know Rich Rodriguez has said that the reason is not because he's stepped back, but it's because Brandon Dawkins has taken a step forward and kind of put himself into that race. But my gut, and they've not told us anything more than they've told anyone else, but my gut is that it will be Solomon. And I think Solomon's a really, really good player when he's healthy and knows that he's the starter. We'll see if there's any impact on the mental side of it, having to fight for his job the way he has. But I think he's a pretty darn good player.
The dude beat Oregon as a freshman.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that,
I went to the Fiesta Bowl with him. Yeah. I'll be shocked like you if Anu Solomon's not the starter. Then on the other side of the ball, Joe, Arizona's defense was really bad last year. They've have a brand new staff. What kind of difference do you expect that to make?
Rich Rodriguez said more than a scheme, he was looking for an attitude when he went out to find a defensive coordinator. And he thinks that he's found that with Marcel Yates. He really likes the, kind of the tone and the edge that he's bringing to the defense. But in reading between the lines and the quotes and everything, and I think this is probably a fair way to look at it, I don't know that you can expect like a huge turnaround, not necessarily from last year to this year, but from last year to game one. This is going to be game one, and whatever system it is Marcel Yates is putting in, and they have not made that public exactly what it'll look like. Sounds like it'll be a blend of what Yates did at Boise State and some of the principles Rich Rodriguez wants in his defense. But yeah, I mean, that's the spot where there's so much unknown for Arizona is on the defensive side. I mean, there's some talent there. They're healthier. Last year, that was an issue. They were just so banged up at linebacker. This is as healthy as they've been in a couple of years. But it's a lot of the same personnel with a couple of, former walk-ons added into it that was producing one of the worst defenses in the country last year statistically. So I think that, adding Marcel Yates in as a D coordinator, sure, it can conceivably help. I don't know how much it's going to help game one. I think this might be something where you see Arizona's defense start to turn it around as the season goes on. So from BYU's standpoint, I think you're getting them at the right time and that it's game one.
Joe, fantastic stuff. We are sending you positive vibes in the terms of pronunciation karma. So we wish you many correct Moses Kamatules and Ului Lapuahos, all of that
You're
stuff.
You're just showing off now.
Joe, thanks for the time, man. Have a good time tomorrow night.
Anytime, guys. You too.